is interactive and there's prompts. Yeah, everyone's thinking I picked the right lunch break that I had known. Okay, so up next is Chris Gilman presenting Houses of Carp, Ephemeral by Design.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? All right, fantastic. So, hi, I'm Chris Gilman. I'm Digital Curriculum Program Coordinator at UCLA Library. I'm also co-chair of the IIIF Community Group for Education with Ben Johnston, and I'm representing members of the Community Group for Education in this presentation. I take responsibility, though, for everything that I'm about to do. They agreed, but they don't really know what's going to happen, nor do I. And I'm sort of gambling, I guess, with my own reputation. I'm going to do some card tricks. Caitlin is now handing out, as best she can, the remainder of a deck of cards. And I'm going to do some things up here and also simultaneously present from a Scalar site. Does anybody know what Scalar is? Some of you, yes, it's a web-based scholarly authoring platform developed mostly at USC by friends and former colleagues of mine. It's about a dozen or so years old, but still quite robust. Okay, so I put in a QR code so you could go into the site. I set it up so that if they drag me off the stage here, you can go into the site yourself and see things and click and view and so forth. I'll get back to this also with contact information, and it has an interesting kind of navigation based on paths. This is upside down for me. And they are here represented. These are the sections or chapters of the presentation, beginning with a little tribute to the mayfly. This is all about ephemera and ephemerality. And coming from California, where we have a lot of tall, very old trees like sequoias and redwoods and bristlecone pines, which can reach almost 5,000 years in age, I'm sort of representing the opposite, things that last about a day, right? And I think that is kind of a key conceptual domain to occupy in thinking about how we get IIIF content in very active use in large settings for a short duration of time. Okay, so I'm going to click into the first section, and you'll see my talking points here. We're on the number 1, pick a card, clip a card, or a brief history of IIIF with scissors. And then a couple other points to follow. But I'm going to start with my card. I practiced this the other night, but I just have to say I'm really not very good at it. I'm going to build a card house here. Let's see if I can get this more or less on the first try. Thank you. I'm here all week. So I thought of this metaphor somewhat in anger about a year ago when I had created a very large, robust learning activity in our learning management system, Canvas, that used a lot of IIIF content, and it was based on Art Spiegelman's mouse, which was hosted on the Internet Archive. And shortly after the end of the semester, the Internet Archive lost a copyright case and had to pull mouse down. and with it went my curriculum. So this was a lot of labor. Luckily, it happened after the term was over, but it could have happened at any point without any notice. And I realized that for users such as myself, and for faculty I work with, and for students, we depend on the reliability of a foundation in IIIF, and that foundation is very strong in the hosting sites where people can follow and see it and make sure they can do all kinds of repair work. But once it's out in our world, in learning management systems and other places, it is vulnerable, and everybody in the content side might not know about it. Okay, so as I worked on this as a metaphor and prepared for presentation, I did a little spelunking in the IIIF world to see, well, how is this represented, and kind of landed in some early to mid 18th century painting and prints and so forth. And it turns out there's a very interesting kind of history of the metaphor of the house of cards that goes through a lot of different variations. It's not just the fragility of it, it's actually the importance of the house of cards for education and for learning. That is, what might be fragile could disappear in a day, but the important part is that there is a learner, such as this cabinet maker's son, who is experimenting with various kinds of structures. Right, so there's a very positive side of this, that the durability is in the learning, not in the core structures. All right, so now back to my house of cards metaphor. There's another level to it, and that's the next level. So if you imagine that what I have created here and what the boy in the painting is created, it's the foundational level. Let's say that this represents the content provision in the IIIF world that we largely represent here. And the bridge between them is, let's say, interoperability. We can make these things horizontally interoperable. The challenge now is at the next level, and I can't do this. I tried, it won't work. It's very difficult to support usage through the same kind of interoperable systems and processes than it is to build this foundational level. And this is why I'm here. This is as much a provocation as it is a plea to develop the kind of data structures, and I would say largely through annotation, that would support the kind of work that students, faculty, and researchers do in a very realistic sense with the kind of materials that we're making available to them. Okay, so the next thing is about cards themselves. And I found out to great interest that Art Spiegelman's own career began with wacky packages. These were spoof cards that I and my peers collected avidly when we were young. And to think about the relationship between cards and content, cards and other forms of content. So I want to do a kind of a second demo, if you will, and then we'll do one last. Right, so here is the history of IIIF with scissors. Okay, so I have, let's say, an illuminated manuscript or a high-value New Yorker magazine, and I'm going to cut out a cartoon. We have it. It has a front, and it has a back, and now, according to the origin myth of IIIF, The core task is to kind of reunite this text fragment or this illumination, as it were, to the original source. So here's the magazine, and I have my annotation or paper clip, and I'm going to stick it back together. Okay, so this is kind of where we are, and I'm in full agreement with that. But there's another side of this, which is sort of the much maligned collectors, the people who cut out illuminations. What did they do with their stuff? So I'm going to do the same thing again with another New Yorker cartoon here. And it's a cartoon. And I have a note card. The card has some metadata and my commentary. I've got a paper clip, and I'm going to stick them together. So there's no return to the magazine. I know where it came from, and I'm going to put this in my card file along with hundreds and hundreds of these things. That's what I need management with. The annotation here, the process of sticking one item to one piece of metadata or commentary, is important for my needs. It's not important for somebody else's needs. It doesn't enhance the original collection. It's just that I have this one item, and I'm going to call this a card. Okay? All right, so now, all of you, or not all of you, 40-something of you have a card that I'm hoping that you've looked at it, right? So let's think of that as a unit of content. Can I ask, without careful deliberation, somebody to say, what is on your card?
A dog.
Yes?
A dog.
A dog.
Being pulled over by a police officer.
A dog being pulled over by a police officer. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. So we have, what are these all about? Yeah. And what sort of content is it? They're cartoons. So this is a collection of cartoons about dogs. Let's imagine that I have collected a bunch of things this way in a very portable and recombinant kind of way that is two-sided, and I'd say represents a certain type of collection that we have lots of. That is a finite set of typologically similar items that vary. They also have tags, numbers, sequences, and other kinds of things, as well as a set of very predictable behaviors associated with them. For example, could all red suit cards please raise your hand? Okay, all black. Okay, all clubs. Okay, so you see that they all have a certain type of tagging that helps you organize them. Now, I don't think we have time for this, but if you with a couple neighbors came up with 5 cards together, what would that form? It's a hand. Right? You have 5 cards, that hand would have a certain value, and we could play a game of kind of social poker. And most of you, if not all of you, know the rules, you know how to sort of perform and behave and so forth. If we wanted to learn more about dogs or human relations to dogs or other types of things related to this content or multimodal content or New Yorker cartoons, we have a very good set. And the fact that we are distributed in a group means that we can apply all of our minds together. So we can mobilize in this kind of setting that is extremely effective pedagogically, and I'd say undervalued in terms of the kinds of collections that we have. So we learned this at UCLA with a collection of patent medicine trade cards. We presented on that before. Just the structure of the cards and of the integrity of the collection enables you to do all kinds of interesting and important things. So this is to say something important about the cards. Right. So I want to quickly go into a few examples. This is in card stock. So a postcard, for example, is very data rich. You can see that this one is annotated. You can flip two sides. And that duality of the card attaches, let's say, a propaganda image about California in the 19th or early 20th century, along with an address, a canceled stamp, a date, etc. And it has this transactional or mercenary purpose that once you send it, off it goes. It's not like an illuminated manuscript or other valuable priceless item that you hold in your collections. Out these things go. That sense of circulation, along with the sense of collective activity and rules-based, make cards extremely effective for this type of work. Okay, so that's about cards themselves. We have numerous other examples I invite you to go through. For example, how a card might be analyzed via stories or exhibit and other things. But I want to move, for the sake of time, into pedagogy and then my final plea. So this is about the context of education and what items in IIIF are and where some of our first transgressions might lie. A lot of the work that I've done in this area has been with Chenling Liu Ziliani, who teaches the history of science. And we published a couple years ago an article about a pedagogical strategy and course design that would take students through a series of steps where they learned annotation in a simple tool, a more advanced tool, and yet a more advanced tool. And we told them, in effect, making an image post in a learning management system, or creating a stories narrative, or creating a long scalar project, they're all effectively annotation. So once you've learned it, you can get better and better. That means that these are transferable proficiencies. What I'm asking now is that we make these transfers all the same data structure. That is to say, if you create an image crop and you have commentary, you have some metadata with it, that should work in all the different platforms interoperably at the level of annotation. So we've met with the annotation group, we met with Glenn, and sort of shopped this idea around. I'd say we're just around the corner from creating a kind of annotation page with multiple annotation authors, multiple sources, and other kinds of things. But it's all in this sort of annotation soup. So Chenling's classes, for example, this one have a 3-unit template that takes you from introductory to advanced engagement with the material. And I just want to focus on one key point here. And that is to say that each of these items is not just an illustration, that it is a specimen or an artifact. And so as the students, for example, studied at the Museum of Natural History, these are marine worms. And they deal with the specimens, and they also deal with the labels that are in the storage containers and the Petri dishes. You can't separate those two. right? The cropping pedagogies that we have with the scissors and all of this effectively converts a IIIF item into an image URL and orphans that content. It no longer has a pathway back to the original. So what we're looking for, again, is a mechanism within annotation that preserves the connection, gives the user the material that they have to use it in various contexts, and have a retraceable route back to the original. Okay. So, so I want to first just provide some contact information for anybody who has an interest in either the technical side of this with annotation or who has an interest in the pedagogy. They can reach out to us and join in our effort. I also want to show and make available a lightweight prototype tool that we've developed in this context that's similarly inspired by the card design metaphor as a way to think about IIIF content outside of the original sites without having to click onto a URL or to see a manifest itself. Right, so the items that we have here in this project are all represented in this interface called mixtape, and you can see by clicking on any particular item, then you can load it, for example, in Mirador, and view it singly or doubly. Or loaded into an image cropping tool. And create these kinds of clipped images. And we've built in a kind of a simplified system that you can crop and paste the item, put it into an email or a discussion post, and it automatically links back to that item in Mirador with annotations. Right. So that's our interest. We really think that by addressing the question of annotation from a different perspective, that is more like a note, that is part of the practice of day-to-day teaching, learning, and research, that we might have a mechanism moving forward. Okay, thank you. Oh, if you could all drop the cards back on the table. They're not calling cards, they're my favorite deck.
You can drop them if you want on the way out to lunch. We'll keep everyone from.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Up next, we have Annalise Welte. Oh, and she's bringing her cards up right now. You got it? Okay. And she's presenting IIIF and art research.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Annalise Welte, and I am the librarian for research services at the Institute of Fine Arts, which is an institute at NYU for graduate students and faculty studying art history, archaeology, architecture, and conservation of art. In my position, I'm also tenure track faculty, so it's a bit of a blended role. So I'm working both as a librarian supporting other people's research and making sure they have the resources they need, as well as doing my own research and projects and publications. Okay, so I want to be very clear with my perspective in this presentation. My work as an art librarian has focused mainly on providing reference and instruction to a wide range of users. Before working at NYU, I was a librarian at the Thomas J. Watson Library at the Met Museum in New York City, and I was also a reference librarian at the Getty Research Institute. So my talk today is very firmly rooted in the perspective of an end user. I am always confused in all these sessions, but really happy to be here and excited to learn more. But yeah, so I first learned about IIIF when I was working at the Getty Research Institute, where their public library is located. And I was asked to create a guide explaining for library users how to navigate with all the different ways that GRA resources engage with IIIF. So that project really set the tone for my continued work. And I'm always thinking about ease of use, ease of access for users who may not be familiar with IIIF. So this is really a presentation about me. So I don't have a background working with code. I'm still not entirely sure how to pronounce JSON, I'm not sure. Sometimes the discussions in the IIIF beginner Slack channel go way above my head. So I think we need a more than beginner channel, something like that. But I need to be able to understand and use these advanced resources for my own research as a faculty member, and also to be able to interpret and use them when I'm working with other researchers and students. So I'm trying. And I also want to flag this article I have coming out in a journal called Art Documentation. It does say 2024, but they're behind. It has not been published yet. So this article, I kind of do a deep dive into ways that the Met and the Getty are presenting IIIF images and resources publicly. And there'll be some of those themes that I touch on with this presentation today. Okay, so many of the resources that I want students to know about for art research, and many of the ones that I use, are from institutions that support IIIF. And just the very fact I'm constantly teaching and using images and visual resources from institutions globally. I'm not talking today about digital images or files from NYU or one specific collection. It really is a global approach here. So I'm going to provide an overview of a project that I've been working on in different ways. Originated with a presentation I did for the Visual Resources Association in 2023, using a really simple Mirador viewer comparison of two art objects as an instruction tool, something I was using, not having students do it, but something that I was using to demonstrate object research. Since then, my research goal has evolved a little bit, and I'm trying to narrow this down, both, again, in the classroom and in support of my own research projects, particularly tracing object provenance. So this type of research involves, again, images, maps, many different types of materials, and again, coming from institutions globally. So just by that description alone, the interoperability part of IIIF seems to lend itself really perfectly to this type of work. But the key is I have to be able to do it. So that's where I'm struggling. So when I'm thinking about object research, I'm thinking about a range of users. So this particular approach is a combination. When I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, many of the audience members I was working with were museum docents. So typically that's a lot of retirees. So we're talking about one end of the range of technology and comfort with technology. But I'm also thinking about class assignments from my current role at NYU. So I'm working with PhD and master's students and faculty who, when talking about art research in one class, literally would get a card that had an art object on it at random. There's no choice. And it would have very little information, maybe Italian ceramic, 17th century question mark. And they're asked then to provide information, do research on this object. You have an artist, you don't have many things. So I'm thinking about this approach and trying to think of some outcomes where I want students to use popular research tools. So in the example I'll show you today, I'm using the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Timeline of Art History. That's a free, open, very easy to use, incredible resource that I want my students to know. I want them to understand how to interpret and read object catalog records. So just as an example, understanding accession numbers, that they might include the year an object was purchased or accessioned or donated into a museum collection. So that's helpful for provenance research. And developing skills describing art objects. So we're starting with this one. I selected this object from the Yale Art Gallery to begin with, and it's the perfect example when highlighting this type of work because there's no specific known artist, and on this page there are only 2 references provided for this specific work, and both of them are just simply mentions that Yale acquired this object. There is no additional scholarship or context provided. So we're going to use this as our starting point, and I'm going to attempt, okay, great. Playing a short video here, kind of condensing the whole process so you can kind of follow along as I speak about it. So in this class, I would go through in more depth all of the different areas of this object record, the so-called tombstone data, understanding, as I mentioned, how to read the accession number, noting geographic region, dates listed, looking at the bibliography. Again, these 2 references just say, Yale bought this object. So this is also a great one to start with because Yale includes the manifest and the viewer links directly in the object record. I do wish it was a little bit more integrated into the page and not separated so much out at the bottom. For people like me, when you say something like technical metadata and APIs section, to me that means it's not for me. So often I would stop scrolling and go right back up. But in this case, it's really helpful. So then I would send the students to the Timeline of Art History on the Met website. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this resource, you can sort of access it in different ways. There's essays, there's chronologies. So depending on the information you're starting with, you can use that as an access point. So we don't have a specific work of art here. We just have a geographic region and a time period. So you literally just plug those in as your filters, and it will show you what are your options. So I'm picking the one that matches this particular object. And then you can click into it and enter into that page. So once you're in the chronology, I would explain we've got some timelines, there are some keywords and some essay links on the side, but most importantly in this assignment, we have all of the objects in the Met's collection that fall within these parameters. So visually, the student is then going to identify an object to compare. The Met record compared to the Yale record in this instance is much richer. There's a lot more information here. There are citations that are full essays about this type of object and put it into context further. So this is, again, kind of highlighting the whole point of this. I want them to be able to find resources and engage outside of the object that they're starting with. So the Met does not include links to manifests or viewers, unfortunately. So in this case, I found it in the Internet Archive. Someone had already uploaded this object, which was really handy. I did also test this with objects that were not already uploaded, and I was able to do it. But I just want to emphasize here, providing the link directly, I know it's obvious, but it will make an incredible difference for users like me, and it did impact it to the extent where I wouldn't use objects that don't have the link. It's too time consuming, it's too clunky, I'm not showing users how to do that, and I will prefer works that already have that set up. So in this case, I did manage it. It was already in there, so that worked out really well. And then the mirror door viewer with the deep zoom and side-by-side comparison, it's so straightforward. This is really simple, but this is exactly what we need for this object research lesson, where I want them to do a really, really deep dive in comparing physical characteristics of these 2 objects and providing reasoning of why they selected this and what we can conclude about the original object. Okay, so that takes us to phase 2. I want to explore what options exist to take this a step further. So I'm looking for something that is freely available and accessible. Again, I'm working on my own. I'm not working with anyone else in my university who is more tech savvy. I'm really coming at this as a one-stop shop. I'm looking for something out of the box. I want the deep zoom and comparison of multiple images, but I also want to explore and have more of a dynamic environment. I'm thinking like the equivalent of my dual monitor setup. I want everything all at once. So I'm asking for a lot with very little knowledge to back it. So if anyone wants to collaborate, please find me later. So this website is amazing. So thank you to the IIIF community, the popular IIIF tools, and especially the IIIF awesome list. I did find it indeed awesome. And it's really helpful to have these pre-made lists. However, I went to GitHub for the first time in my life, and it was not pleasant, I have to say. This was my reaction to it. And this is just the top of the page, very normal for many people here, but I see things like forks and branches and pull requests, and I want to close it. I don't want to see this. It means nothing to me, and I feel like this is not the place for me. So again, if that can put this all into context for you, that this was literally my first time on a GitHub page. And I did like it. Okay, so I'm going through this list and really just trying everything. So this is from Exhibit. So to the best of my current ability, I should say, I experimented with them to see if I could find a good fit. So we've seen examples even today of really effective projects using this narrative storytelling, successful examples from class projects, exhibition highlights. It's a wonderful idea for a project for students. And in this case, I added some of the images and text from one of the citations. So I took one of the articles from the Met page. And in this case, it was really helpful to make the article come to life. This quote is referring to this image, figure 4. In the article itself, these were on different pages. So you did have to toggle back and forth. So in that result, like it is a very helpful thing, and it does bring life to that. But I really then wanted all my other images. I want everything. I want an environment where you can zoom in on the quote and zoom in on all of the images at the same time in different ways. So I wasn't quite what I hoped to achieve. I know there are so many other tools and environments, and I'm still making my way through the list, so I'm looking forward to finding more options. But again, another concern that I have is when I'm using these things, once I finally understand it, then having the ability to communicate that to other researchers who are like me. I mentioned this project to a PhD student, and they were sort of like, what? Why? What? And there's so much more. Like, I needed one of the ambassadors to help me sell this, because I know that this is worth it in the end. I also wanted to mention 3D models. We've heard some exciting updates. 3D models come up in my research all the time. I did instruction classes on architectural models held at the Getty, held at the Royal Danish Library, and so having the ability to use the 3D images would be of a huge impact, especially during the pandemic. We relied on, of course, digital surrogates, and we've seen even visiting other collections. And I mention architectural models in particular because of their fragility. So often at the Getty, for example, it would be unusual circumstances where we would take an architectural model out and show it to a researcher. There would have to be a demonstrated really high research need. Some of them are literally popsicle sticks and toothpicks, so it's not something that has a strong support for physical in-person use. So these are just some of the resources that I found helpful. And in this case, from the Smithsonian website, I did find an object that fits into my other two examples earlier that I'd love to integrate. And you can see on the left, the 2D version has the lovely link that I don't have to do anything. I can just click on that and add it to my viewer. And then the 3D version, we can see it does not have that yet, and I'm very, again, excited for the day where I can do that. So thank you, and I'm really excited, again, to keep learning and collaborating, and I appreciate it.